الله 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 نور السماوات والأرض Lantern of light evolving together.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin in the name of Allah, the kind and the merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear viewers. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us another opportunity in our Tawakkul series brought to you by the charity Lantern of Light. Lantern of Light is a UK registered charity that was founded to relearn our faith, our true God-given identity, and to find the light within. All our amazing donations received are used solely for the campaigns you wish to support. So please do visit our website www.lanternoflight.org.uk. Thank you. The human impulse to seek truth is like a plant's impulse to grow towards the sun. It's innate in us, it's part of our DNA, and it's our fitra to seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our yearning for deeper understanding may sometimes inspire us to leave the hamster wheel that we are going through and go towards a path of self-discovery. And Allah communicates to us in different ways. Sometimes it is through something we accidentally come across. Sometimes it's a verse of the Quran we are reading. And sometimes it's something someone else says to us that feels like a big coincidence. So today we have the beautiful Rawnak, who has taken the journey of this self-discovery. She's not only beauty on the outside, but possesses a very beautiful soul too. And she's a well-being certified yoga teacher who connects the mind, body, and soul. And she has a background of community engagement. She has very kindly going to share with us the journey of rekindling her faith and living a life of tawakkul ala Allah wa kafa billahi wakila. And to rely on Allah, she says, and sufficient is Allah as a disposer of affairs. So, Assalamu alaikum, Rawnak. Sister Rawnak, Assalamu alaikum. And thank you for your time today. Sister Rawnak, are you there?
Oh, I am. Alaikum salam. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thanks so much for having me on, and what a beautiful and really flattering, of course, introduction. But yeah, I loved your initial words on sort of the innate feeling of wanting to seek truth. Of course,
yes, and absolutely. Yeah. And that's what you were looking for, right?
Yeah.
So just yeah, beautiful. Just before we look at your journey of tawakkul and your story, I just want to tell our audience that thank you for joining us on our YouTube channel. And Rawnak is here. If you have any questions, you have any comments, I'll be happy to ask the questions to Sister Rawnak, and she'll be able to answer. So please do comment on our YouTube channel, Lantern of Light. Thank you so much. Right. So Rawnak, how are you feeling today?
Good. It's the first time I've done a sort of a live interview, so a bit nervous, but I'm sure we'll get into it as we've had really beautiful conversations before.
Yes. So Rawnak, it's so inspiring to see a Shia Ishnashari yoga and meditation instructor. And I had the honor of being in your class, which was so amazing. I was really amazed and blown over by your class. It was so beautiful, mashallah. So before we explore how you came to be a yoga teacher, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're born, your background, and what it means to be a community engagement person?
Yeah. So in terms of sort of my background, my earliest memories were in Manchester. So I sort of my childhood was spent in Manchester, growing up with, alhamdulillah, my family. I grew up in a sort of typical immigrant family, like growing up around the Iraqi tradition. I grew up in a very tight-knit Iraqi community. And alhamdulillah, I was blessed early on to be taught, the key tenets of Islam. I grew up in a sort of very community-oriented environment. yeah, and I suppose I sort of followed the typical trajectory of life of pursuing my studies and so on and so forth.
So,
Yeah,
did you have a very a Shia background in the love of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam?
alhamdulillah, shukr. Yeah, very very early on, I was blessed with that. And my parents have always been really great role models. And it's maybe something you take for granted at the time, but when you look back, you realize it's a gift really to already be sort of born into a family, a practicing family, and a family that, alhamdulillah, practice what they preach, I suppose. Alhamdulillah, shukr.
Yeah, that's wonderful because actually you grew up a good family, a Shia family. You were taught all that. However, after university, you did feel a kind of a discomfort, and you wanted to search for something, right? Was that kind of an ilmul yaqeen you wanted to have? Was something sort of troubling you in there? And did you feel that, oh, all this Islam, I want to sort of go and find something more? What was it that triggered this journey that you took?
Yeah, so I guess from a very young age, I've always had a very curious nature, which probably my parents and family find very irritating. But I've always been the sort of person who asks lots of questions, and a lot of the time I wasn't very satisfied with the answers. So I've always been that sort of curious person who's always learning, and that's one of the things I've always enjoyed is like meeting new people because you learn new things and new perspectives, and I think that's just been a very very natural part of who I am, and it's sort of shaped the path that I've taken. I guess in terms of university, I sort of picked a vocation. I did sort of business management and marketing, and very early on, I decided I didn't want to work in like a big corporate private sector environment because it didn't align with my values. And I suppose when I graduated, I had what I call, I probably had many of these, but a quarter life crisis. Because most people around me, particularly within the Iraqi community and Asian community, everyone goes down a very particular vocation. So, whether it's medicine or pharmacy or something very, very definitive. And so people go straight onto, they start their job. Whereas with me, for like a whole year, I was working really random jobs. I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. It was just kind of panic mode. And so my sort of career has been very much trial and error. So very early on, I worked in local government, and I still do. It's a lot of trial and error. And I had the opportunity to dabble in different placements within local government. And very early on, I knew I wanted not to sit behind a desk, which most jobs are like that now, but actually working within the community. I'm blessed to do that. And so again, that sort of people focus has always been a big part of my life. And I suppose so sort of my day job is sort of community engagement and advocating for local communities and empowering local communities, and that's, I think that's a central theme with everything I do. So even I've sort of volunteered as a football coach, something I'm really passionate about. Yeah, and so it's like supporting. I mean, it was with children, of boys and girls, but actually empowering girls and women and allowing people to find their space and their inner reality and inner truth is just like fundamental to everything I do, including yoga as well.
Okay, that's wonderful. So although you are in a job that was doing community engagement, there was an intuitive muscle or an inner voice that was calling you to do something more, or going to search for something more. So when did you get this feeling that, oh, I want to sort of break through this routine of my work and this life and go and search for beyond, basically?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I mean, as I say, early 20s, I was trying to figure out what job I wanted to do, and sort of dabbled in various things, and some things were right, some things worked, some things didn't. And I guess as anyone can sort of relate, your 20s are quite challenging because you're trying to figure out what you want to do with your life and who you are and what's important to you. And you try to unlearn things, I suppose, as well, because you think that certain things that the society you grow up in your community you grow up in, you think that that's you, but actually you start to realize, oh, is it me? And I moved out of my parents' house quite well in my early 20s. I moved to London, which is a big thing, I suppose, for an Iraqi Muslim woman. And so that was initially me trying to just seek something else, expand my horizons, and also, I sort of, I describe London as the world in one city.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm constantly learning and constantly growing, which is why I'm still here. It just sort of draws me in that sense. But anyway, yeah, so my 20s were kind of, you know, you had ups and downs as most people do. And then sort of coming into sort of my late 20s, obviously COVID hit, and everyone, I'm sure a lot of people can relate, sort of, it was in a moment to reflect on what's important, and you start to realize how life is really short. Alhamdulillah, you know, I'm very privileged. Sort of during COVID, I got to work from home, and so I moved back to my parents for a little while, spent actually time with my family, which was a real blessing. But actually coming out of it, you know, I came to that realization that life's too short. And I suppose, as with, you know, life, you know, there were various disappointments.
Yeah.
You know, I had a bit, you know, burnout at work. You know, my mental health wasn't very good.
Yeah.
And I suppose I had a kind of a spiritual crisis of sorts. You know, all these dissatisfactions and things that happen, which is, you know, perfectly normal. Yeah, I had that kind of a spiritual.
Yeah, so yeah, we all go through those bathit and kabid, you know, sometimes you feel oh great and sometimes you feel constricted, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of the routine practice that I had of so the routine religious practice that I had just wasn't enough, and it wasn't satisfying me deep down. Like I knew it, I just wasn't satisfied. And you know, I'd do my salat and I'd go to, you know, community and Islamic gatherings, and it wasn't hitting deep enough.
So you wanted a deeper understanding of spirituality in a sense?
Yeah, I wanted a deeper understanding of spirituality. I suppose I had like a, you know, I sort of questioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, you know, what's going on? Like I'm doing all the right things, and actually like I was confused, and it wasn't Islam in the way that I was experiencing it wasn't resonating with me. And obviously it got me into a massive panic because, you know, Islam has been my everything. And you know, it's just like it's obviously like a really big question. And actually, you know, I'm sure a lot of people again go through this experience of relearning Islam. And I think going through the motions, I just couldn't do it anymore. I think going through those motions, doing the same job and going through the same motions, and being in the city, it wasn't doing it for me. And I was like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like, what can I do? And so it hit a point, like I said, post-COVID. And actually I had this idea like many years ago, like 10 years ago, to travel the world. It was always my dream. And it never really felt like the right moment. And then there was one time I was clearing out my childhood bedroom, and I picked up a journal from when I was 18 or 19 years old, and I'd listed all the things that I wanted to do. Kind of a bucket list. Yeah, I'd completely forgotten about it because I'm not really a bucket list kind of person. But one thing I'd written was I want to travel the world, and this was 10 years prior, so when I was 19. And so I picked it up and I was like, oh my God, I had this idea 10 years ago, and I've been sitting on it for 10 years. And I was like, I think this is the moment, like, you know, and of course it never feels like the right time. And like, again, being in a particular community where everyone just follows a very narrow path of like going to university, getting a job, getting married, etc., etc. It was never going to be the right time. And so in that moment, I was like, I can't just sit here and do nothing. And so I made that decision to.
But before you actually went traveling, you because you know nature gives you a spiritual boost, right? I think you're a very nature person.
Yeah, I love
that. Right? So you decided before you actually went to travel, you went somewhere else, right? Did you went to work on a farm or?
Yeah. So so the 12 months, the intention, I was very intentional. I set some intentions. I even had a life coach who helped me immensely. I set some really clear intentions about what I wanted to get, and it wasn't just travel. It ended up, the dream was originally to travel for 12 months, but actually it was about pursuing things I've never had time to do, and so I've always daydreamed about living off the land and living in the countryside. So yeah, one of the first things, as you know, I did was I spent 2 weeks on a farm in Oxford. So some people will know this farm. It's Willowbrook Farm.
Yes.
It's a Muslim family-run organic ethical farm. Yeah, alhamdulillah, it was a really beautiful way to start my 12 months. Yeah, quite an experience. And I was there recently for the second time.
Yes, that's wonderful. So maybe did you get in touch with your silence within yourself? What was it then that those 2 weeks triggered off?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because so what I did was I was ready when I'd made that decision. I was ready to, so I put my job aside. You know, I packed a very simple bag. Even when I traveled, I packed a very, very simple bag. I put everything aside. I stripped myself of everything, and like I suppose you might talk about ego, but like everything that you think you are, I stripped myself of that. Even like community and like even family, even friends, like that's who you think you are. You think you're those people, and actually, this was a step where I just stripped that away, and it was a moment for me to just kind of gradually sort of strip that away. Obviously, I was still in the UK, and so that was the moment. It was like it's just me and my really shabby clothes on a farm, just seeing what things are about without too much expectation or too much overthinking. It was just like, here I am. I've made this commitment.
So was that an inner voice that says, do it? Or did you have a lot of mental cogitation? Shall I? Shall I not? Shall I? Shall I not? Or did you just jump into it?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, I needed 3 months' notice. If I wanted a sabbatical, which means I can go back to my job after, I needed 3 months' notice. So I had a lot of time actually to mentally prepare for it. And obviously there were obstacles in the way that I had to go through before all of that happened. One of the obstacles being like making the decision that actually I was going to do this unusual thing that, for other communities, it might not be a big deal, but for an Iraqi Muslim to do it, it was a really big deal.
And of course, it didn't come without challenges, right? Did your parents say, yeah, go? Not really, right?
No, I think that was the biggest obstacle. Saying, because it's funny, when I make a decision that maybe I think my parents might not sort of support, I kind of gradually drop it in and then eventually say, okay, I've made this decision. I am independent. I guess I'm 30 now, but, and so there was a lot of resistance. They just did not understand it because number one, I mentioned the thing around that's not what people do in the community.
Absolutely.
So there's that thing. And then there's the thing of, from the very early on, alhamdulillah, my intention, I'd like to think, was very pure. It was very much a spiritual pursuit. That was it. It wasn't, but from their perspective, they saw it as very kind of like frivolous and extravagant. And it's like, why do you need to do this? If you want like inner satisfaction, that my dad would say, just go and volunteer, like here. And so they didn't get it. And for a long time, I was like battling. I was like trying to explain myself, and then I've just come to accept it. It was a journey. It took time, and it was coming to accept that actually they come from a very different time and a very different place. And as immigrants or refugees, they come from a place of survival. And subhanallah, like they've provided me with the privilege to make a decision like this. So obviously that was one of my big challenges.
Yeah. And what about finances? And then you probably got did you have a return ticket wherever you went, or you just got a one-way ticket?
So yeah, in terms of money, I had some savings. It wasn't it wasn't so much, but actually I made the decision early on that I was happy to spend it. It was an investment, and money does come back. Like if you have a pure intention, money does, and money comes and goes. We all know that money comes and goes, and when you have a calling, you just can't say no. It was so strong.
God's calling there. So there was a trust that God is going to sort everything out for you in a way, right?
Exactly.
You went with that deep tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's so beautiful. So what decision, it's obviously it was a spontaneous decision, but also a planned one, right? To a certain extent.
Yeah, it was planned in so much I knew which region I was going to travel. I mean, initially I wanted to travel the world. I looked at the world map and got so overwhelmed and thought,
I can imagine.
I met a lot of people who were doing, a few days in each country, and they probably did do a lot of the world. But for me, it was very much about slow travel, and it wasn't, I guess, it was just kind of very focused on kind of inner journey.
You wanted to go to an Islamic place, right? A kind of
that was the intention.
intention, yeah. And when you're on a path of self-discovery, everything we meet is a mirror, everything is a ray of guidance, right? So as you go through your motion, that's what happened to you, the right place at the right time with the right things. And they say that there are no coincidence is God's way of being anonymous.
Yeah.
So
Subhanallah.
tell us something where actually you landed up, and what was the next steps and what happened.
Yeah, so I sort of landed on the region, and then
Whereabouts?
so Southeast Asia, the
South-
first place
and that's
was
what you focused your,
Indonesia.
yes.
Yeah, because as I said, I was focusing on Muslim-oriented countries or Muslim-majority countries because for
Yes.
me it was about seeking inspiration for, seeing how other people live Islam. Because I was so confined to a British city Islam that I was like, there must be something else.
Right.
I wanted to immerse myself in that, and so you asked me if it was planned, and it kind of was a one-way ticket-ish. So I had certain plans and some ideas in my back pocket, but actually it was probably the most spontaneous I've been in my life. And most people that know me know I'm quite organized, so I like a good itinerary.
As a yoga teacher now, yes, you have to, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was the most spontaneous I'd been in my life, and it was actually, I really tuned into my intuition about what I wanted and needed at a particular moment, which was a really, really beautiful and sometimes scary experience. But the first thing that I did, when I was looking at sort of the region, I realized it was really, a popular place for people to do yoga teacher training. And
you didn't know that to start with. You just happened to be.
It wasn't my plan. Yeah, it wasn't my plan. And it was just kind of like when I was sort of thinking, I was like, I've always done yoga. I love it, and I've always wanted to share it with people.
So beautiful, because when they say when I pray, coincidences happen. I mean, there must be an inner prayer as well to a certain extent, right? That brought you to that place, which is so beautiful. Okay, so it was a yoga place, and not often you can find, yoga is generally an Eastern practice where you get, the yogis doing it and the Buddhists and things like that. So who did you find then there?
Well, so when I was looking, I was open to whichever country, whichever sort of section of Southeast Asia that came, whether it's India or Nepal or whatever. And the majority of the yoga teachers were non-Muslim, but also male. And because it's quite a physical practice, I wasn't so keen.
Yeah.
And subhanAllah, I landed on this one course in a region I'd never heard of. I mean, I wasn't that familiar with the whole region anyway. And my yoga instructor here, she advised me to have a class with that person to ensure that the energy the energy is aligned and you could resonate with their practice. So bless her heart, she did me a free yoga class online, and I absolutely fell in love with her energy, and I knew it was the right sort of course to go for. And subhanallah, it was meant to be, but she was Muslim, which there was no other female Muslim yoga teacher doing the training course.
So
and so it felt like so that was the first, it felt like an invitation to Lombok, which is a neighboring island to Bali in Indonesia. It felt like a calling to that island, and it just was. We had built such a beautiful connection, myself and her, and we had sort of, there's obviously other students there, but I feel like we had a special connection in that she was telling me about how yoga had brought her closer to Islam. They had their prayer room on site, and she prayed next to me, and I was like, in my whole life, I never would have imagined praying next to, my yoga teacher.
Wow, what kind of experience! Wow.
Yeah, subhanAllah, it felt like it was meant to be.
So then you embarked on becoming a yoga teacher. Is that right? So was that quite a tough course, or how long was the course? And did you have to had you ever done yoga before though, or Sister Rawnak?
Yeah, I'd done it for over 10 years. So I did it
when I was like
17 years old. I'd never done it like, excessively. It was just something I did every single week. It had such a positive impact on myself. It just had such a positive impact on me physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And I couldn't necessarily put my finger on it at the time. but I knew I wanted to share it with people. So it was always in the back of my mind. And obviously
this was kind of a crash course, or I mean, how long did it take you, or was it a whole year? Because you've been really traveled for practically a whole year, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was about 7 to 8 months of travel.
7 to 8 months, yeah. How long
but-
did it take you to be a yoga teacher then?
Not particularly long. It's a 30-day course, but it was very intense. So you'd have like a 6:30 a.m. start, ending at 5 a.m. 6:30 in the morning.
6:30 in the morning.
Finishing at 5:30, and then you'd have homework. And
Wow.
yeah, so it was very, very intensive. It was but you had to kind of just go with it and just embrace the full experience. And I shared a room with one of the students, and subhanAllah, it's even within that, you know, you have challenges, you know, there's different personality types, and you know, and so that was part of the test. It was like, you know, you kind of tested whether you were actually becoming sort of what's the word? There was just challenges being thrown in there, because
you embrace the situation in a way, and maybe the word surrender to what is.
Absolutely, it was absolute surrender to what is,
and then you sort of move on. So you did yoga. Now I also know that you did a beautiful meditation with us, earth, walking on the earth, and I know you're very much of a green person too. So did you actually do meditation with yoga itself?
Yeah. So what a lot of people don't know is actually yoga is a very holistic practice. So in the West, people associate it with the physical movements, which is called asanas. But actually, yoga is a holistic practice. There's something called the 8 limbs of yoga, which is very much, there's a kind of like stages that you go through. So the first thing you do is actually, there's a lot of refinement of character. And then you go into kind of breathing practice. Then you move on to the physical movements and the asanas. And then you work towards a meditative practice. And the ultimate goal actually of yoga is enlightenment and connection with the divine. So it's actually a very holistic practice, and some people, you know, they just go for the physical, which is perfectly fine.
I always thought maybe yoga and meditation are two distinct practices. Asanas for yoga, your physical, and meditation for your mental or emotional or spiritual, but they actually fuse together. Are you saying that?
Yeah, exactly. So so when you're doing yoga, the aim is, the physical movements, the asanas, the aim is to come into a state of comfort and ease, and then when and like you build up to that comfort and ease, and actually when you're moving, you become very conscious of your physical state and the way that your body moves and the way that it connects with the ground and the earth, and then ultimately it transitions you into the aim is to get into a meditative state, and when we talk about meditation, we're talking about the aim is to control the fluctuation of the mind. So people just think it's like, you know, completely just going silent, and that's what meditation is. But it's controlling the fluctuation of the mind, because as humans, we all have a tendency to either think about the past and kind of ruminate over our, you know, past, or we have a tendency to think about the future and we get anxious about the future. Actually, meditation is about coming to the present and controlling that fluctuation and actually, I think one thing to point out is because I guess we've talked about this before, is we actually hold a lot of emotion in our body. And so when we create movement, we can start to connect to that emotion that we've held that we might not actually be conscious of mentally. So when you become, it's actually when you kind of can acknowledge that tension or the emotions that we've held in our body, that we can sort of start to bring ourselves to the present and address that. And actually, I mean, I'm doing a lot of reading at the moment about how the suppression of emotion can leads to a lot of illnesses, and there's a lot of evidence to say that.
Yeah, is that why sort of like at the end of the yoga practice you have, you know, download everything now, relax, and you might feel a bit teary, she says, or something like that. So your emotions come out at the end of a practice. Is that what you're trying to say?
Absolutely. I mean, I even saw an Instagram post today that I quite liked, and it said something like, normalize crying when you come to the meditative state in yoga. Like I follow a few yoga accounts, but it's true. It's like you have to just embrace what comes up, and sometimes not judge it as well. Just allow it to happen. Yeah.
Oh, that's really amazing. So how different is meditation to mindfulness? Is that the same thing? And I would like also just to ask our viewers, if you have a question regarding meditation, yoga, anything, and I think Sister Ronak is really an expert at that. If you have a question, please do post it on our YouTube channel, and I'm happy to ask Sister Ronak, or any comments as well. Yes, I was asking you, is meditation and mindfulness the same thing, or is it something different?
I would say it's the same thing. So I guess when you think of meditation, you think of sort of sitting in a silent position and sitting in a very particular way and doing things in a very specific way. For me, mindfulness is carrying that meditative state without you throughout the day. So trying to tap into that kind of practice.
Yeah.
So for example, even like when you're washing the dishes,
yes,
how many times do you think, oh my God, like I've got so many dishes, I just want to get to the next thing, I've got a zillion other things. But actually when you bring yourself back and you just kind of feel the water on your fingertips, and you just sort of say, well, actually this is what I've got in front of me, and I'm going to just immerse myself in this activity. Or you're sitting, you're stood in the shopping queue and you're just waiting to be served and you're agitated, and it's actually like, no, let's be mindful and just bring ourselves to that state.
Yeah, so like you're saying that you teach best what you need to learn the most, right? As well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we all need to learn that. Maybe we all need to be teaching yoga in a way.
Yeah, why not?
But how is the yoga and meditation practice compatible with Islam? So obviously you said she was a Muslim. How did she actually fuse the two together in a way? So we have this muraqabah, right, in Islam, about being mindful and meditative. So can you just throw some light on that?
Yeah, I suppose she didn't really have to say so much to me about, like, in terms of actually the teaching. I knew exactly what she meant, because the more I have improved, even since the yoga teacher training, the more I've improved with my meditative practice.
Yeah.
The more I have khushu' in my salat.
MashaAllah, that's so good.
Alhamdulillah, shukr, and that is the biggest gift from it all. Is that khushu' and that stillness that I have been able to experience. It's only then that I have really felt the true presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in no way I have ever done in my life. So yeah, like it's kind of, again, going back to that thing of like mindfulness and taking that meditative practice onto the prayer mat, and whilst you're reading Quran, and even when you're doing something in your day-to-day life and setting the intention, this is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it's just an act of whatever. It's that kind of intentionality, and it's that holding that present moment. And but you know what I used to do before, for example, when I used to pray, it's really funny, maybe a lot of people do this, but I'm like, I'm gonna put something on the hob and I'm gonna go pray my salat. And what am I doing when I'm praying? I'm thinking, ooh, is my food ready?
Burning.
What a way to pray. So now I've really, for me, it's like I've carved this. I mean, I'm not very far from perfect, but I've really consciously carved that time out. This is my time.
And is that because you practice that so often that it's easy to shift into that gear anytime you want?
If only it was easy. What I would say is I get so many people, even during the retreat that we both went on, I get so many people say to me, I'm really bad at meditation. There is no such thing. We're all bad at meditation. And just like I said, you teach the thing that you need the most yourself. Just like salat, it's about practice. As soon as you start practicing, you're not going to have that tool with you. It's a continuous. So salat, you have to keep doing it. Even the days that you do not feel it, you do it, because it's a practice, it's a habit. So I think what I would say is if you build up enough practice, and then you experience that stillness and you experience the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even once, then you realize that it's possible. and because you realize it's possible, then you know that you can tap into it later on. But yeah.
And hopefully we will try and see if we can get some sessions with you on Lantern of Light, inshallah, so you can give us some tools that you've learned on your way. And I suppose it's a tool to connect more deeply with it, right? It's just not it's not about emptying the mind or anything like that, like, you know, we are told. So so it's very beautiful to say that actually it helps you even in your salah and in your everyday life, basically. So were there any highlights of your trips from a spiritual perspective? So I know that you know, you are very in love with the Quran in a way. You're always with Quran. So was there any highlights vis-a-vis the Quran, and could Quran become a meditative practice, or could it have an anchor point?
Yeah, so there were so many things I was privileged enough to experience on my journey. I think just a few things is that alhamdulillah, shukr, I experienced Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in ways I'd never done before. So for example, there was so much generosity on my journey. So
you mean people being generous to you?
Yeah, in ways that I just never experienced, and like then you start to feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is acting through them, and I became very attuned to that. And again, it was just like such a beautiful thing. And similarly, not just with people, but through nature, through experiences, through things, I was like, that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking to me. So I was able to tune into that. And again, once you tap into that, and you know it's possible, even when I come back to the craziness of the city and life, because you know you've done it before, you're like, okay, even though I can't necessarily reach it immediately, like you know there's a possibility. So alhamdulillah, that was a big thing for me. And like I mentioned, is that opportunity to see how other Muslims live, like it really inspired me. I went to some places where there wasn't, I feel like sometimes in the city or just in certain communities, there's a lot of noise about how to practice Islam, and it's just so happened to be that way.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, just like there's so much detail and there's so much ways that you're told to practice. And I went to these really, really simple places where everything was so stripped back. It was about community, and it was about living off the land, and it was about the Quran, and I was like, oh, like how beautiful is this? Like the real Islam is like manifesting, and I can see it. And so I've taken a lot of that away from me, and it's really been it's a big inspiration for me, and I'll hold on to that for a very long time, inshallah, for the rest of my life.
Because you did say you went to Ramadan, spent Ramadan there, right? The month of Ramadan.
Yeah, so I was just gonna go on to talk about the Quran as you asked. Again, like, so I went out on a journey to seek something, and I wasn't exactly sure what that was.
And this was after you did your yoga course.
Yeah, so the yoga training was one of the first things I did.
Okay, right.
And I was blessed to spend Ramadan in a beautiful Muslim village, and again in Lombok. So I was staying with a Muslim family. It was the first time I was away for Ramadan. I've always spent it in the UK, and they have some really, really beautiful traditions for Ramadan and Eid. And one of the traditions, well, firstly, their food spreads are so simple, like they just live off the land, and it's just like very simple stuff. So for me, I'm so used to, like, alhamdulillah, like extravagant spreads of food.
And like, what sort of food were they eating there?
Well, I guess it's considered exotic here, but things like jackfruit, which they grow in the back garden. You know, a lot of vegetarian stuff. And
right.
And like rice, and just like nothing just overly extravagant. But anyway, one of the traditions they had was that they would get together, the children, the men, and the women, and it was mostly focused on children actually and women. But they'd come to the mosques, and Lombok is nicknamed the island of 1,000 mosques. So there's mosques everywhere, small, big, beautiful, simple, just really varied mosques. And their tradition was that they'd read Quran from Isha time all the way to Fajr.
Wow, mashallah, the whole night.
Continuously, and so you'd hear the echoes of the Quran in the neighborhood because they were reading it on the megaphone. So that was really beautiful. And I remember going to a mosque the first time in Ramadan, and I was like, I'm just going to sit in the corner and just listen to them read Quran. And they insisted that I come and sit with them and read the Quran. So obviously I was a bit nervous, and they expected this Arab to be really good at reading the Quran, and I'm not at all. But it was just such a beautiful experience of community, and they love the Quran. Like, even it was very usual in Lombok to see the kids at Maghrib time running every day at Maghrib time. They'd be running to the mosque to do their Quran classes. They have a real love for the Quran. And so during kind of Ramadan, we'd sit around and we'd read, and it became like a regular thing. And there was something about it that I really reflected on, was this, I call it like the democratization of the Quran, in that I'm used to environments where when we read Quran, it's usually for the one person who's really good at reading. Actually, this was for everybody, every child, every woman, every man, everyone was reading the Quran, whether they were, I mean, don't get me wrong, some of them were incredible readers. They start at a very young age, like mashallah. But some of them weren't so great, and that was perfectly fine. And we all just read it. And I was like, why are we not reading the Quran just for reading the Quran and not have, and so that was really beautiful. And then alhamdulillah, Shikha, that was just that's really touched my heart, that experience. And then when I came back after my travels, I did one final thing. One of the final things I did was to join a retreat with just a weekend retreat with a beautiful organization called the Green Dean Tribe, which focused on connecting with nature, connecting to nature and connecting to Islam at the same time. And they just had a very regular practice of reading the Quran, like different times. At Maghrib time they would read certain surahs. At Fajr time they had this, what they call the period of so after Fajr there's a period they call before the birds sing. So it's like you read the Quran, and then
the Quran itself says the Fajr Quran is mashhuda, right? It's being witnessed in a way.
Yeah, subhanallah. And so it was just a weekend, and I told them it was just like a really heavenly experience. I mean, it just says something about the facilitators and the leaders. They're fantastic. But again, that like made me love the Quran even more. And I was just like, again, it was this communal experience of reading the Quran together and just the melodies of the Quran. And alhamdulillah, that is like such a big gift. Like, if there's one thing I've taken away from this trip as well, is just this, I've sort of learned to love the Quran more deeply, and it's something I've taken for granted before. And alhamdulillah, shukr, most mornings I try to read the Quran, even if it's just one ayah. And it's just,
subhanallah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, shukr.
So good. So can the Quran, the melody of the Quran, become an anchor for a meditative practice in a way? Is that possible?
Oh yeah, because you did ask about meditation, didn't you? So yeah, I mean, there's a few ways that I see the Quran as like a meditative practice, because I learned to love. So when I read the Quran, I mean, honestly, I'm very far from perfect at reading it. Alhamdulillah, I was blessed during COVID to go to a few Quran classes. Not very many, but I dropped into a few, so my tajweed improved only slightly. And so it made me read the Quran more beautifully. I mean, that's no compliment to me. I just mean because of the beauty of the Quran.
Yeah, actually, Rawnak, I've heard you. Your voice is absolutely amazing. I must tell our viewers. You're just being humble. But we were touched. No, we were touched by your recitation, I tell you. Mashallah, mashallah.
Bless your heart. So I guess with one of the principles of meditation, or one of the kind of methodologies for meditation, is to find an anchor point. So that might be something that you look at. So for example, some people might look at a candle wick, and that's their kind of anchor point. Or as people know, there's like chanting that you might do once you do meditation. So if I do chanting, it'll be dhikr. So I'll say like Allah, or I'd use Allah's name. So it's like an anchor point where you just really focus on that. So I would advise people to use an anchor point. But when you read the Quran and you get into a meditative flow, that meditative flow, I find, is like an anchor. And so you're flowing through this melody. And what happens when you anchor yourself to something is you kind of are able to come to the present, and any kind of thoughts about the past or the future are parked. So that's one way. Another way is, alhamdulillah, like I do this and it really has a positive impact on my salat and my Quran recitation, is I mean, maybe people do this naturally, but I guess I never did it before, is like when I'm reading, don't be afraid to just pause and find that stillness. So you might read an ayah and just pause and hold it there and just be comfortable with that silence and that pause. Even in my salat, sometimes I'll pause and like hold that stillness and find that you know, and you, for me, I alhamdulillah, that really helps. And then there's another thing of like, if I'm reading a Quran and there's a particular ayah or half an ayah or a word that in that moment really resonates with me, again, people might do this, but I repeat it over and over and over again. And again, it's like a repetitive thing.
Sometimes you're wondering about something in the same subjects addressed in the Quran that you're reading, right? Exactly. And sometimes you're shaken up because the Quran fits perfectly to the situation that you're in at that moment, and then gives you a reassuring and comforting feeling. So, mashallah, yes, that's so beautiful. So you're saying that sometimes pausing is a great thing. So obviously they say between stimulus and response there should be a pause, even in our life. So when we pause and we are silent, that's when magic happens. Is that right? I don't know.
That is absolutely right. That's absolutely right. That's where, for me, that's where that I feel the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's only through that stillness. And that, it's only through that stillness because, like, how do you feel Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if it's not through that stillness? Like, he's closer to you than your jugular vein. And what does that mean? It means, he's right there with you, yet you're chasing this and you're chasing that and you're thinking about this. But actually he's right here. Like, so
he's here, but I'm not here, right? That's the thing.
Exactly. You're the one that's gone over here and there.
So what advice or what kind of tips would you give for us to be silent, to become more into yoga and meditative practice, and to be able to take this beautiful journey that you've taken? Anything that you can share with us?
I mean, I think more generally my advice, just from my experience, is something that I've learned is to embrace your unique path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like I say, there's a lot of noise, and that's no fault of any one individual. It's just the way life and communities work. But if you are able to carve out that time in whichever way, like, again, I was privileged to take 12 months off. That's not a privilege that a lot of people can take, but just take it, because it's only with that time and that space and that silence that you will find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and yourself all at the same time. And at the bare minimum, that's why I really praise people who do take, they come to my yoga class, because I come to my yoga class, but just take that really intentional time off. If they say, like, this is 1 hour for me to just sit with myself and just and in terms of meditative practice, honestly, like, for me, sometimes it's just doing 1 minute a day, and then you can build it up to even 5 to 10 minutes. I find effective.
And maybe Salah was meant to be that practice that Allah has gifted us with, but maybe we've taken it slightly a bit as a chore and something we need to tick off and get on with it. Perhaps. And even the Hajj, right, to get away from the normal and move into an area which is a bit of a discomfort, but at the same time a self-discovery area, right? So perhaps we've got even fasting, maybe a pause into the normal day routine. Subhanallah. So we've been given some practices, but perhaps we don't take them too seriously. But what about, like, I know you decided to go back on to Willowbrook Farm for a couple of days. Would rather than a year like you went away, would 2-3 days be okay, or do you suggest that you need time for yourself for a whole week or 2 weeks or maybe more?
I mean, obviously, the more that you can do, the better, because the more deeply you can go. But like I say, that's not possible for everyone. I think one of my key learnings, and it's something I have to keep reminding myself about, is so whatever you do, whether it's an hour or a day or a weekend or a week, is to set really clear intentions. Because sometimes, like, even with this travel, I could have easily just been like, oh, I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to see this many sites and I'm going to do this and that. But it's only because I set my intention is that I got something out of it. So I think with anything, this goes for anything,
and subhanallah, when you do a yoga practice as well, the first thing they tell you is set your intention.
Exactly.
Which is sort of why you're here in the yoga, what intention you're going to take with you. So and also for us, as sincerity, our ikhlas, our intention is so deeply rooted in Islam in a way. So, mashallah, somebody's saying that Sister Ronak is a beautiful soul inside out. Her energy is so mesmerizing.
Oh,
so,
very
so
kind.
that's beautiful, right? Any other little tips you can give us that, oh, okay, we should spend some time every day with ourselves, and not maybe rush around. Anything else that you could share with us that would help us to actually connect to ourselves, and at the same time make our salah, our practices, everyday practice, a bit more mindful and meditative?
Yeah. So what can I say? I think there's, for me, the really powerful thing for me was the shedding of
Your
my
identity.
my identity, my job, everything
Yes.
around me. I think that was a really powerful moment and a really big learning curve, because how many times do we define ourselves by our jobs? And even
Yes.
now, I try not to. When I meet new people, I try not to ask them about. I don't want that to be the first thing I ask about.
That's so
Um,
beautiful.
yeah, so I think if there's any way that you can, I mean, it's a constant thing as well. I think just minimalism in general, just
Yes.
kind of shedding like the
Mm,
physical material things and trying
mm,
to do that in different parts of your life, I think is a really, really powerful thing.
mm.
Um,
Yeah. And also, I think you are a very nature lover, right?
oh yeah,
um, and you've
being
been working with
in
the
nature.
chickens.
Yeah. Spend time
So
in nature.
yeah.
Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like speaks to us in nature, like
Yes.
how just I just find it so mesmerizing. And just sit there, and we did the earthing meditation where we walked
Yeah.
barefoot at the retreat.
Mm,
Just kind of embrace it and feel it, and um just yeah, sort of ponder on the kind of miracle that is nature. And it's also a mirror of us, like aren't we like miracles as human beings, the way we function? It's a mirror of us. Yeah, subhanallah.
mm. And when we are a path of self-discovery, every person, everything we meet is a mirror, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
suddenly you get some new understandings.
Yeah, definitely.
And sort of they say, the woven tapestry of our life's journey is like, without it's not without a purpose. So we all have some kind of purpose. We fit into the whole picture. So trying to find our real values, and like you did, mashallah, you seeked God with all your heart, and you pursued your values, and Allah gifted you with so many beautiful people around you whom you learned from, and you got this, epiphanies in your life, mashallah. And now, where do you see yourself going? Would you sort of see yourself going any further? Do you think you're happy where you are? Would you become a meditation teacher or anything like that? I know you're a yoga teacher, but what
Yeah.
do you have any
Yeah, I
future
have
intentions, so
lots
as
of
they say?
dreams. I do have lots of dreams. Alhamdulillah, shukr. Again, one of the things before my journey was that I just didn't feel like I had a calling or a vision. I didn't have a vision for my life, and I
Yeah.
envied people who had a really clear idea of where they wanted to be.
Mm,
Alhamdulillah, I came back with this really clear vision of where I want to be. I won't give you
mm,
lots of spoilers, but I guess one of the things is I want to continue, for me, because yoga and meditation has helped me so much, such a holistic practice. There's something about, I've been really interested in like Islamic mysticism,
yeah.
and I just, there's so much untapped like resources and learnings and
Mm,
history, and so I want to weave the two together.
that's
Um,
beautiful.
so that's kind of my intention, is to weave that. There's definitely like a niche in like, yeah, and then
Mm,
like creating, I think for me, a big thing, a takeaway for me is like community. There's so much power in community in such a capitalistic, individualistic society. Like
yes.
that's what we need. Like we need it right here, right now. And
Yeah.
if I can contribute to that in some small way, like alhamdulillah, like I'd feel so privileged.
Subhanallah.
So
Then
inshallah.
may Allah guide you all throughout, and inshallah, I'm sure you will succeed, because you have a true intentionality, right?
Oh,
to make
inshallah.
the world a better place. Absolutely. I mean, today everyone is looking and searching for the true Islam, where we can connect and feel God in our lives, right? But the life is so busy, like we are on a hamster wheel all the time, and you forget to pause and to take that. So inshallah, if you can teach us to, how good is it to learn yoga online?
And we could do yoga classes
Yeah.
online. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's possible. I probably need the right setup. I've not done it before, but yeah.
Yeah, mashallah.
Yeah.
So it would be really lovely to learn from you. And I think my takeaway today would be to be able to pause, take some time out for yourself, and sort of calm the mind, right? Because your mind is always a monkey mind going here and there, and which takes practice and intentionality. Is that right? So
Absolutely.
any few words you would like to share? Anything more you would like to add that maybe I didn't ask you or we missed out by any chance?
I think I would encourage everyone to just go on a journey of self-discovery, but also go. There's something about building that self-trust as well. We have an inner voice, and a lot of us don't tap into it, and it takes time and it takes effort. But wow, is it so profound when you do tap into that inner voice?
I think sometimes we are a bit worried. The inner voice, is it something that I'm just hallucinating, or is it something really true that I have to go with? Right. So that's where, when you said that you believe in self-belief, right?
Yeah.
That when you have an intuition, follow the intuition. So the intuitive muscle.
Absolutely.
So you knew it was real, mashallah, for you. Hopefully we all can build that intuitive muscle to be able to hear God's voice a bit more. So thank you ever so much, Sister Ronak. I really look forward to maybe you doing some meditative sessions with us on Lantern of Light. And thank you very much to all the audience or all the viewers that joined in today. I'm sure you were really inspired by words of Sister Ronak, and I look forward to seeing all of you on another journey of tawakkul, inshallah, soon. I know it's been quite a long time, but Lantern of Light is a platform where we help women to be able to come out of their comfort zones and really achieve their true potential and purpose in life, inshallah. So if you'd like to visit the website, it's www.lanternoflight.com. And I really appreciate today Sister Rona giving us all these amazing things. I'm already feeling I want to go there and start meditating and doing more yoga. And inshallah, hopefully you will give us some more of your time. So thank you so much. May God bless you and guide you to all the amazing things that you are intending to do, inshallah. And maybe take us as a community in that journey too, inshallah. So jazakallah khair. May Allah bless you plenty. And thank you very much to all the viewers. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Wassalam. Have a good evening. Assalam.
My Lord, have mercy upon the weakness of my body, the thinness of my skin, and the frailty of my bones. Ya Rabbi, 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 Ya Ghafoor, Ya Ghafoor, Ya Ghafoor, Ya Ghafoor, Ya Ghafoor, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you are the one who forgives. Time after time I stray away from the path that you have paved. Time after time you come back and say, oh believer, in you I have faith. I turn to you, I ask of you, Ya Sari al-Rida, guide me through. Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Mujib, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you are the one
response. When I am broken and full of pain, I wonder where do I complain. But you're closer to me than my vein, and remind me to call out your name. Ud'uni astajib lakum, ud'uni astajib lakum, ud'uni astajib lakum. Call on me, I will answer you. I turn to you, I ask of you. Ya Sari Ar-Rida, guide me through. Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi. Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif, Ya Latif. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you are the one who is gentle. I can't remember how many ways I've called you with pain and dismay, but I can't remember till this day a reply with no loving embrace.
I turn to you, I ask of you. Ya Sari Ar-Rida, guide me through. Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi.
Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you are the one who loves. Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud, Ya Wadud. I know I'm sinful and turn away from your kindness you show every day, yet you still guide me back on your way, as your love saves me going astray.
I turn to you, I ask of you. Ya Sari Ar-Rida, guide me through. Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi.
Ya Noor, Ya Noor, Ya Noor, Ya Noor, Ya Noor. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you are the only light. Darkness has clouded my heart. How do I try? Where do I start? Your love for me ignites a spark. Let your light in me never depart. I turn to you, I ask of you. Ya Sari Ar-Rida, guide me through.
Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi.
Ya Razzaq, Ya Razzaq, Ya Razzaq, Ya Razzaq, Ya Razzaq. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, you are the one who provides. Without your rizq, we have nothing. The Qur'an's words are so telling. We only give from your provision. Through you is our status risen.
I turn to you, I ask of you. Ya Sari Ar-Rida, guide me through. Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi.
Ya Hadi, Ya Hadi, Ya Hadi, Ya Hadi. Ya Allah, one who guides. Allah, I keep replacing you. Now it's hard to tell false from true, but with your guidance as our cue, I know now I can start anew.
I turn to you, I ask of you, Ya Sari al-Rida, guide me through. Ya